Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 19th of May 2014. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment. Coming up in the show, this is probably going to be a long one. YouTube is rumored to be acquiring Twitch, the video game streaming service, for $1 billion. All this and the OC Remix track of the day is coming your way right about now. In news that inundated my inbox and made my Twitter even less pleasant to read than usual, Variety.com is reporting that YouTube is set to acquire Twitchtv for $1 billion. This is supposedly based on information from sources close to the deal. This would be a little bit less, of course, than the amount that Google acquired YouTube for in 2006, which was $1.65 billion. And assuming these rumors are actually true, it is expected that this deal will be announced probably quite soon, assuming it hasn't been already, since I recorded this the day before you watched it. So, why am I reporting on it? Well, I use both. In fact, I'm a big user of both. They both consist of most of my revenue stream. Yeah, the vast majority of my revenue stream comes from Twitch and YouTube. It's the basis of our business. So to see both services merging together, it has a lot of potential consequences. And I would like to talk about that and also talk about the way that this operates as a business and the kind of effects that this deal might have. We should bear in mind, of course, that it's possible this deal will not be allowed. US regulators are expected to be looking closely at the deal since both of these organizations are dominant in the fields that they engage within. YouTube is the #1 video hosting site, whereas Twitchtv is the #1 gaming-related live streaming site. And of course, they are both fixated on the idea of user-created content. So, we're not talking about competing with Netflix or anything along those lines. It is possible the deal will be blocked. It is possible that there's going to be a great deal of wrangling over it. So, what exactly would this mean for those of us that create content on both YouTube and Twitch? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Alright, well, from my perspective, there is a rather large list of potential pros and cons involved in this. The first most obvious con that most people are coming up with immediately, and they're probably right on this, is that up until now, Twitchtv has managed to dodge the wrath of copyright for the most part. Not entirely, but it doesn't deal with anywhere near as many DMCA claims as YouTube does. It doesn't have an automated takedown system. It does not have content ID matching. And as we are well aware, over the past 12 months or so, content ID matching has become a really big deal. It's become more strict, and it's been screwing over an awful lot of channels. It was initially designed to make sure that Google could comply with the inundation of requests from a variety of different places, huge media producers, publishers, and conglomerates. They wanted the ability to shield themselves from that, and the implementation of Content ID was the way that they did that. It involves them not getting sued over and over and over and over again. Twitchtv hasn't really had to deal with too much of that. There have been DMCA claims, most of them for games being streamed prior to release, and DMCA claims have been complied with by Twitchtv. However, there is a huge number of streamers on Twitch that utilize copyrighted music. They play it in the background of their streams, and to the best of my knowledge, there has not been a single consequence to doing so. There have been several emails sent out saying, you can't do this, guys, but there has never been a real consequence to it. And indeed, most of the very popular streamers that we see do use it, although some of the savvier ones have lately moved away from doing so, because frankly, why on earth would you risk your livelihood by doing so? Who knows when exactly that kind of thing would end up coming back to bite you in the arse? Not to mention the fact that if you use both YouTube and Twitch, you can't use copyrighted music and then export it to YouTube, because YouTube will then Content ID flag it. So you're shooting yourself in the foot if you want to host your VODs over on YouTube and make money there as well. What's the likelihood of a Content ID-like system being implemented for Twitch? I'd say if Google owns it, there is a very real possibility. It kind of legitimizes Twitch in the sense that it's now owned by a very big company that is focused on user-created content, but there is a fairly huge price associated with that. I personally have no problem with stopping people from using copyrighted music on streams that they monetize. As far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't be doing it in the first place, although I can absolutely understand the entertainment value that's brought to the stream as a result of the choices of music played, as well as the inherent value of having music in the background for you to just play along with. You know, you're playing games for 6 hours, you don't necessarily want to listen to the repetitive game music for 6 hours, you want to listen to your own stuff. So, in that scenario, in that context, it's actually very understandable that streamers would do it. They're not deliberately going out of their way to rip off artists. Indeed, there are many artists that have made deals with these streamers to promote their music. You know, I promote quite a few artists, including, of course, Zircon and the guys over at ocremix.org. I play their music on stream, I have permission to do so, and everything's above board. Everyone's a winner in that respect. I get great music to listen to, the viewers get great music to listen to and enjoy, and the guys get the promotion, so that's great. However, there are an awful lot of streamers that do still use that kind of music, and I imagine that will not last if Google gets a hold of it. It seems fairly unlikely. Here's the thing, though. While this is being brought up as the biggest, most obvious problem, I also feel like it's the lowest hanging fruit of the discussion. Yeah, it will probably happen. It should have probably happened years ago. Yes, there is a legal grey area in regards to broadcasting stuff that you listen to off, say, Spotify, a service that's already streaming it for free. There is some legal confusion regarding that. The law doesn't really cover it all that well, and of course it varies on a country-by-country basis. But at the end of the day, I think people knew exactly what they were doing, and does it torpedo people's livelihoods if they have to stop playing that stuff? No, it doesn't, because they're not being prevented from streaming video games, they're being prevented from streaming third-party music, which they made the decision to play over the video game. Cool. Alright, I don't really mind, and while a lot of people are talking about that, I certainly think it's one of the least important points of this potential acquisition. There is a plus side. Let's do a pro, shall we, from the list. The plus side is the potential legitimization of Twitch in the sense that YouTube is saying, look, streaming video games is a viable business model, and we, as an organization, are looking to acquire someone that can do that and has a reputation for doing that. I mean, that's all that Twitch does. It's a video game streaming service. So the fears that YouTube would be clamping down, say, on Let's Playing or just using a lot of game footage in general would seem to be alleviated by that. If you're going to require a service whose sole purpose is to stream video games, and a lot of that streaming is just personal playthroughs of games rather than, say, esports events, although Twitch does do a sizable number of those as well, then what you're saying at that point is, we believe this is a valid form of entertainment, we believe it's a valid form of media, and we're willing to pay a lot of money for a service that does it, which also means we are willing to defend the act of doing so. That, for those of us that make content based on video games, which again very much is a grey area as to whether or not that work is transformative, just how derivative it is, whether or not it's covered by fair use under critique, commentary, education, and so on and so forth, all very much up in the air. But it's good to have a company that would have our back on that. That said, if we want to get hugely speculative, that could potentially be a move that says, look, you want to do video games, you better go do it on Twitch, go do it live, and we don't really want it on a service anymore. I very much doubt that YouTube is going to move away from hosting video game content. It is the most watched content on YouTube, without a shadow of a doubt. But hey, we're talking about rumors, so why the hell not speculate? As I said, it seems extremely unlikely. Now, what would become of YouTube live streaming? I have a feeling that there, of course, is going to be some cross-pollination in terms of technology. We'll talk about video on demand in a minute. But it does seem to me that YouTube would remain as a service for streaming just non-gaming related events. There's already very little traction with YouTube when it comes to streaming video games, yeah? It pretty much lost the battle. It doesn't have a very good system for doing it. The chat is absolutely terrible, and as strange as it sounds when I say that Twitch chat is awful and I can't understand why people would want to go into it, it has its own culture surrounding it. As weird as it sounds, it has its own catchphrases, it has its own little weird eccentricities, and a lot of people enjoy engaging with it, even though on larger streams it can become basically unmanageable without ridiculously heavy moderation. There is a feeling of being part of a crowd. It's a service that has fairly low delay and syncs things up quite nicely, so everyone's seeing it at about the same time. So if you're watching a live event and something happens, then you do have that sense of belonging, that sense potentially of community there. You are part of a real crowd, even if you are all over the world. So there's a definite advantage to that, and the chat system on YouTube does not do that in any way, shape, or form. It's absolutely useless. The actual YouTube system itself is very basic, especially when it comes to monetizing the live stream. You don't have anywhere near as much control as you do on Twitchtv. And the system that they have in place works, but that's about all that I can say that it does. That said, there is of course the advantage of YouTube's video-on-demand system as well as its ability to rewind existing live streams. That's something you can't actually do on Twitch, and that would be a feature that I feel would be massively useful. If Twitch was able to gain part of that, and you were able to rewind to either see a moment again, or to actually look at a part of the stream that you just missed out on, that would be massive, especially for live events. Great for live streams too, of course, but for live events, that would be huge. And then, of course, you have the video on demand. On Twitch, it sucks. It's as simple as that. Why does it suck? Oh, so many reasons. One reason is discoverability. It's very hard to get any traction on actual VODs on Twitch. They do exist. You can find them. If you keep scrolling down the page, you'll sometimes find, hey, this is kind of our top videos on demand from this week. But the system is terrible. The related searches basically don't work. It's very hard to search by category. Discoverability is almost completely non-existent when it comes to Twitch VODs. And they're generally used by users of the channel who just want to watch something that they missed. And you don't get the massive penetration and, of course, the new users that you would end up getting from a YouTube-related search. So many viewers come in through the YouTube ecosystem, without even knowing what your channel is. They find you on search, they find you on related. The search engine is, of course, very potent. When it comes to YouTube, it's basically Google's search engine, so it's very good at what it does, and Twitch doesn't have any of that. I do have to wonder if YouTube would want to improve any of it, though. It seems like the synergistic relationship that already exists between Twitch and YouTube, in that the live stream goes on Twitch and then the VODs are exported to YouTube, is perhaps something that Google would want to strengthen. That's okay. I think that would work fairly well, although we run into the same problem, of course, when it comes to the content ID matching system potentially being an absolute nightmare to deal with, as much as it already is, of course. The only real problem, I suppose, is if Google decided to restrict the video-on-demand system entirely from Twitch, and I find that highly unlikely. It's something that I should perhaps point out right now, but these companies will probably be kept as independent as possible, and while there might be some cross-pollination, I don't necessarily see a situation where YouTube and Twitch are the same thing and that there's just this full-on integration between the two. I imagine there will be enhanced integration, but I can't imagine it being completely dominant. Twitch is sort of its own entity, and it's got its own audience, and it's probably best to try and maintain that and not cannibalize it completely. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense there. The elephant in the room, competition. This is really unfortunate, I think. Ever since Own TV went under, Twitch has been without competition for quite some time, and I've said it many times before, you do not want to be in that situation, because really, if you are the only game in town, you can play however you please, and there's not much that anyone else can do about it. Setting up a streaming service is very expensive, and it's not something that many companies are scrambling to do because it is a giant pit in which you can toss your money for potentially no return whatsoever. Azubu has come back and it's currently in beta, although as we have seen before, Azubu's actual funding is sketchy and there have been many reports about the Sapinda group and what exactly has been going on there. So that's maybe not the best possible competition. We've got Hitbox, we've got Dailymotion, and we had YouTube, which was really set to be the service that would actually compete directly with Twitch. As it stands, it looks like that is not going to happen, and they would rather just own the competition. There are many potential pitfalls involved in that could very well cause us to have worse service quality in general. That could happen. There's no doubt about that. Competing with Twitch was hard enough as it is. It already has its own audience. Let me tell you from experience. I run a series on MLG TV, and I do that simply because MLG offered me the prize money to be able to run that event. It wouldn't have happened if they hadn't done that. So I set up with MLG TV and I run that event, and I know for a fact I would get at least double the viewers over on Twitch, because Twitch has that discoverability that I was talking about earlier. There are people, including myself, that just go on Twitch and see what's on. Nobody does that on other services, and that means that you have to specifically drive traffic to your stream rather than simply going on air and being guaranteed an audience. If I go on my Twitch channel, for instance, I have on my Twitch channel 194,147, as of the time of recording, followers. That's actually a pretty large amount. I have more Twitch followers than I do subscribers to my StarCraft YouTube channel. It's a significant number. And I also have a lot of active paying subscribers, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But that means whenever I go live, I'm guaranteed an audience. I don't have to tell people that I'm going live. I'm guaranteed an audience, and then, of course, people will find me. And there's also a snowball effect. If you happen to be the top streamer in a particular game, you gain more audience. The front page of Twitch is actually pretty potent as well. Anything that pops up on the front page is going to get a boost in some way. As to how much, well, it really depends on what they're doing. But Twitch has that level of discoverability, and these other services simply do not. Not to mention that while we might complain about Twitch's quality, Twitch is, for the most part, very reliable, and it is hosting a huge amount of video on a daily basis. So, yeah, we have problems with it, but those are the minority of users. There's no doubt about that. The vast majority do actually get a decent enough experience. Twitch has the infrastructure, they've already got it set up, and they've already eaten the majority of the cost that it required to do so. And other startups, well, they've got to start from the bottom. And it takes them a long, long time to get where Twitch currently is at the moment. I even know that just from streaming on MLG TV. There's a lot of features that just aren't there. And yes, while the quality might be good, there are still plenty of issues that have to be dealt with, as much as I love my MLG overlords for paying the prize money for my event. Okay, let's talk about subscribers, shall we? So, Twitch has a paid subscription system. This is something a lot of people have been asking for on YouTube for years, and there's been no hide nor hair of it. Why? Because it's Google. YouTube is one of the main vehicles for Google's advertising, which is its main earner. That's where it makes most of its money. It's the biggest ad agency on the internet. And it uses YouTube to deliver a lot of those ads and can do so in video form, and it's highly effective, and they can charge a lot of money for that. Now, the question is, would they even go to a paid subscriber model, or indeed, would they gut the current paid subscriber model? I find it highly unlikely that Google would try to mess with the paid subscription model on Twitch, especially considering a lot of the new subscriber buttons don't actually take away ads. Mine does. Mine was one of the originals. It was one of the first, and one of the benefits that we got with that was the ability to have ad-free viewing, which as far as I'm concerned should be standard on everyone's subscriber package, because that is a real service. And I am in, of course, full support of putting that onto YouTube. Why wouldn't I be? You know, I'm in favor of giving choice to consumers, and if they're not given a choice, they will take matters into their own hands. If they don't like ads, and they don't have a legitimate way of not watching them, they will find a way to do it that involves hurting everybody, like, say, ad block. So it seems to me that it's in YouTube's best interest to allow for that kind of service to happen. Like I said, I don't think Google would go and prance on that and get rid of it unless they wanted to move their ad inventory over to Twitch. Do they want to sell AdWord auctions on Twitch? Because Twitch uses a different ad provider, they have a different inventory, they get their stuff from different places. Let me explain how ads work on YouTube. Okay? There are 6 kinds of ads that a YouTube channel can display, and they are split into some broad categories. Firstly, there are either ads in the video itself, an actual video ad, or there are ads on the page. Now, the ads on the page are worth an awful lot less. Of the ads that are displayed in the video, there are 4 types of that: Auction True View, Standard Reserved, Auction In Stream, and Reserved In Stream Select. And these 4 ad types make up the vast majority of what is displayed on a YouTube video, and they all have different characteristics. Auction True View are some of the most common, and they actually make up the bulk of the ads that are displayed on my channel, and they have a button that allows you to skip, yeah? And these ads are worth more than your regular ad, but they don't pay out if you click that skip button. So what they're selling to the advertiser is, look, you only have to pay if people actually watch the ad. If they choose not to watch it, you don't get charged, but you get charged more if someone actually watches it. So it's an experiment, of course, by Google to try and get more ad engagement, and they seem to think it works pretty well, and they do a lot of business in that. Then you've got Standard Reserved In-Stream. These can't be skipped, and they're actually sold on a reserved basis. What does that mean? That means if you want to actually buy ad space like that, you've got to go talk to YouTube. You've got to talk to a YouTube sales or network sales representative. Say you're advertising a movie, for instance. Like, I want to buy X million views for my movie trailer. How do we go about doing that? And you would generally do that with Reserved In-Stream. They are worth quite a bit of money because, of course, you can't skip them, but they're more difficult to buy and they usually have to be bought in bulk. So you won't see a lot of small companies doing that. These are the kind of things that big game publishers or, say, movie studios would buy. Then you've got auction in stream. Yeah, and these are the ones that pretty much anybody can buy. If you've ever seen a really local ad, like I actually see ads for an air conditioning company in North Carolina on some videos, that's probably through auction in stream. These are bought via an AdWords auction. Anyone can go into one of these things, and a lot of people buy their ads through this. And with AdWords, it's the Google AdWords that you see on searches, that you see on websites. This is the video version of that, yeah? They are generally worth a lot less than the other two types that I just described. And then you have reserved in-stream select, which are skippable ads that are sold on a reserved basis. So, similar to the standard reserved, but these are skippable, so it's just an option. And there's not a huge number of those sold, at least not on my particular channel. So those are your ad types. Google has a setup for this. They have this stuff on lockdown. They know what they're doing. And Twitch does not sell on the same basis. Also, they don't display on the same basis either. The way that Twitch displays ads, more to the point, the culture surrounding ads on Twitch is fundamentally different from the way that YouTube does things. What happens on YouTube? Okay, usually what happens is you will see a pre-roll ad prior to watching a video. And you will also usually get either a little box ad over to the side or a pop-up ad that kind of pops up the lower, I'd say it's kind of more of a lower third, but it's actually even less than that. Just a little thing that pops over the video that you can easily close or whatever. And maybe you get an ad at the end of the video, but since you've stopped watching the video, you don't bother watching that anyway, so it doesn't matter. So generally speaking, you don't get that many ads per video. On particularly lengthy videos, for instance, my Hearthstone videos that are an hour long, there's an ad in the middle of those. But most of the time, it's just a case of one ad, one video. Doesn't matter what the length of the video is. A lot of people are frustrated by the fact that people monetize like 90-second clips with pre-roll ads. I share your frustration for that. I think it's BS. It shouldn't happen. But there you go. On Twitch, things are a little bit different. Now, most channels have a pre-roll, so when you tune into the stream, you immediately get an ad. This kind of sucks, and I actually had it turned off on my channel because it means you miss out on content. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to turn that off because I don't want to frustrate my viewers, because frustrating viewers leads to higher ad blocking figures and pissed off viewers. Why would you want that? You wouldn't. You know, so we did that. But what it also has is a bunch of ad breaks, and that can vary between 30 seconds and 3 minutes. And that's entirely at the behest of the streamer. They select the number of ads that will be displayed. Yeah? So you have on Twitch 6 options, and they're in 30-second increments. After that, you can't display another set of ads. I think it's for another 8 or so minutes. So you are limited there, but generally there are a lot more ads on Twitch than there are on YouTube. And the culture is a bit different. It accepts that. But you generally get less views on Twitch than you would on YouTube. You know, I put out a video, 2 days ago that has over 200,000 views already. If I stream, I'm going to get a fraction of that, but they're going to be watching more ads because that's the way that things work on Twitch. The question at that point is, where on earth do you go from there? What exactly do you decide to do at that point if you happen to be Twitch and Google trying to figure out the fundamental differences between the way that ads work? That's a tricky one. I would have to imagine they would just keep things separate at that point. I really don't think you buy Twitch just solely to integrate it completely into YouTube. That sounds nonsensically stupid. If you want to do that, you do it so that you have big control over the streaming space, you're able to do some cross-pollination between the two sites, but you don't get what makes Twitch Twitch. I wonder what's going through Google's mind, though, in that respect. One, can they actually sell enough ads to fill that? We already have problems, of course, with the ad inventory on Twitch with repeated ads and all sorts of things like that. And YouTube has some monetizable issues as well. The average gaming channel, based on people that I've surveyed on YouTube, gets about a 38 to 40-ish% monetizable rate. That means that over half the views on YouTube aren't actually running ads at all. There's a variety of reasons for this. Ad block is certainly part of it, but it's actually not the main reason why a lot of videos don't actually get monetizable views. There's two main parts of it. One is the true view ads, which make up the bulk of people's inventory. If someone clicks skip, that doesn't count as a monetizable view. It makes no money for the channel. Okay? So that lowers the amount of monetizable significantly. And then you also have to consider that YouTube is viewed in over 150 countries around the world. Now, advertisers do not want to advertise products in regions where they are not for sale, so you have to have regional sales teams, and there are many regions which do not monetize all that well or have very limited monetization available because they just don't have as large an ad inventory. So a big channel like mine that actually goes out to over 150 countries, a lot of those countries are not going to be seeing ads, and that's not their fault. But it seems like Google is struggling to try and get enough ads to run in that many regions. Now, adding Twitch to that mix and then feeding their ad inventory into Twitch, I think is just going to make the problem worse, and we might see monetizables drop across the board when it comes to both streaming and YouTube if they decide to spread things out that much, particularly considering that a lot of that ad inventory can be eaten up by repeated ad views on Twitch in a culture where, you know, getting 6 to 10 ads an hour is not actually that unusual for a lot of channels. Would Google consider adding in the paid subscription model? They've been resistant to it, as I said, because their main business is advertising. Why would they want to give you a way to not see it? But there's a hell of a lot of money to be had there. And I think that perhaps Google has noticed services like Patreon eating their lunch. With Patreon, you can justify not running ads on YouTube if you have enough Patreon subscribers, and actually some channels have gone down that route. They said, look, if I make a certain amount from Patreon every month, I won't run ads on my videos. Now, for very, very large channels, that's not really feasible, but YouTube is paying for that bandwidth, and yet they're not seeing any return for it. You know, that's how YouTube continues to exist. Ad views pay for the bandwidth. That nothing is free in life, someone has to pay for it. It's just whether or not it's the viewer who's paying for it, or whether or not it's the viewer who's being sold as the product, and the advertisers that are paying for their eyeballs. Would YouTube decide to move towards a possible paid subscriber model? Obviously, people like me would kill for that. That would be a large revenue generator. I would love to see the ability to remove ads from videos and actually pay to do that. That would be great. I wouldn't mind YouTube taking a portion of the money for that. Absolutely not. I think that's reasonable, and maybe that's the way things are going. We're seeing a lot more crowdfunding. We're seeing a lot more kind of personal sponsorship or patronage deals going on with either Twitch or YouTube channels, or even sites that do other things like, say, blogging or writing lengthy critiques of video games, creating drawings, all sorts of things like that. This is a hell of a lot of speculation, of course, but it would be interesting to see whether or not Google would look at the Twitch model and say, yeah, maybe there is a way to get in on that. Although I have a feeling that if they did that, the days of asking for donations on Twitch may very well come to an end. It might come to the point where Google would be requiring viewers to do a donation through a service that they ran, and they get a piece of that, rather than allowing these channels to just take donations willy-nilly and they pay for the bandwidth for them to do so. Again, lots of speculation, but I think a lot of the kind of weirder practices of Twitch, the stuff that's going on, the Wild West of streaming, would certainly be a bit more civilized, for either good or ill, if Google were to go through with this acquisition. Am I too worried about it? Well, again, I think my biggest worry is the monopoly issue. The fact of the matter is that Twitch doesn't have a lot of competition. If YouTube bought them and backed them, then trying to take on Twitch would be extremely difficult. But the legitimization of gaming streaming and game content in general is something that I'm obviously very much in favor of. It's beneficial to me. The playing of music, I don't care. I've not cared about it for a long time. I've been playing stuff that I've had permission for, and if it moves more streamers to actually do that, probably so much the better, because I'd rather we didn't all have a target on our back thanks to the actions of a few that are doing things that they really shouldn't be doing in the first place. There you go, folks. There's a few thoughts on the possible acquisition of Twitch from YouTube. Thank you very much for watching the content patch today. It was certainly a long one. It's a big topic, and I'll keep you up to date as I hear more on this issue. I would like, of course, to end with something else that I have permission to play. Yeah, it's funny how that works, isn't it? The OC Remix track of the day. It's not often that we get to play a remix from Metroid 2, the 1992 Game Boy version of the Metroid franchise, subtitled The Return of Samus. But there is a remix of the song Escape and SR388, the original composer being Ryoji Yoshitomi, and the remixers Pyro Paper Planes and Viking Guitar. A very chilled out version of this track, with a big focus on the piano ambience, which I really dig an awful lot. It's kind of great, and it's called The Unnamed Frontier. You can download it for free from ocremix.org. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.